Does everything seem right for everybody?
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Akura, you're all set?
I guess the only thing that's missing is that
No, you
the
have to put
interpreter
him as
is
an
now Sam
interpreter.
Sonder.
You can click the bottom
Yeah,
right
I
below.
thought that I had him already set.
He got kicked off
Oh,
the
now
call.
it
But
has.
Nada.
maybe he just has to accept or something, because it will say interpreter next to his name once he's set up.
Yeah, somehow it switched it to Sham.
Oh.
Yeah, Sham is interpreter right now.
Did that work? Okay, great.
Hold on. Let's see.
Now, does everything seem correct? Okay, I apologize. This is first time doing this, all the technical stuff. So today's interview is with Atula Sakhi. For the month of September, I'm going to be sitting in for Archana because she's moving. And today I'm going to run the technical stuff. And Garangi Priya is going to do the interview. I thought it would be nice because they have something major in common. So here is
So
Garangi Priya.
I'm sitting in for Mudden, who's sitting in for Archana. We'll have multiple sharing here. So yes, thank you all for your patience. And thank you, Atula Sakhi, for being here. I am very excited to be interviewing her today. I don't know if I've ever told her, but when she got initiated, I was really, really excited because even though a Gurukuli and being born and, you know, it's a kind of material designation, it still was really special to me to have that sisterhood with you. And it felt really nice to have you on board. So we are doing the interviews as Archana has started, the hero's journey. So we are going to hear from Atula today, her story, and the hero's journey really is about taking everything that comes in our life, the good and the bad and the ugly, and being able to integrate it and really see how it can help us and how it can be beneficial for our journey. So I am going to read Atula Sakhi's bio, and then we will turn it over to her. Atula Sakhi was born in New Vrindavan, West Virginia in 1979. Her parents are both disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. They moved to New Vrindavan in the early days when it was just getting established, and eventually they were arranged to marry. She was born during the Palace of Gold Marathon, a very busy time for the community. Like most of the other children, she was placed in the New Vrindavan Gurukula, a boarding style school, when she was 5 years old. The Gurukul closed when she was 9 and she went back to live with her family. This was about the time when interfaith was being preached and New Vrindavan was excommunicated from ISKCON. This resulted in a strange but interesting time for her as she was exposed to every faith or religion in current existence. At age 13, she attended the day school in New Vrindavan. She also chose to move into the temple ashram. She lived under the care of her dance teacher, who was as sweet as you can imagine a Bengali mother to be. Atula finished the last 2 years of her schooling in a local high school. After graduation, she chose to enter the material world of fashion. After a month of going to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale, which was as far away and exotic a place as she could find, she dropped out. After a few twists and turns, she ended up in India with a good friend. This trip to India saved her from drifting too far down a dark road. Although she felt a strong pull towards a bhakti path, she still had a long way to go. She ended up living next to the new Dwarka temple in Los Angeles for the next 5 years, where she experienced a mix of LA life and Watsika Avenue life, the two being somewhat incompatible. She secured an AA in the arts of fashion, worked in the industry, and then as an assistant art teacher. The desire for a different lifestyle led her to Alachua, where she met her husband, Amalasham. They both shared the same vision of having a family, being part of a community, and living close to nature. After moving to California to be near close friends and family, Atula's brother Bhima Sain brought them for a visit to Odarya, where they met Guru Maharaj. The temple and gardens were very attractive, and they felt the mood and vibration resonated with them. So naturally, they came for more visits, as Guru Maharaj's words slowly began to enter their hearts. On Janmashtami 2013, they both took initiation from Guru Maharaj and once again took to the path of bhakti. When they heard about the Sarigrahi community in North Carolina, they signed on and left California with their 2 boys, Atreya and what? Everything okay?
Yeah.
Atreya and Aravinda, they left California with their 2 boys, Atreya and Aravinda, to help pioneer the project. This choice eventually led to a deepening of their faith in bhakti and a welcoming community of friends and families with a similar vision. Beautiful. So I want to ask you, Atula, to start your story by telling us any significant events in your early life that would have helped you choose the path of bhakti. So I feel like it's a little bit of a different story when you're born into the path of bhakti. But are there times in your early life where that attachment and that longing for bhakti kind of were there? And or what inspired you as in your early life to commit to the practice of bhakti?
Good question. Yeah, I've thought about that a little bit. And I realized that when I was young, whenever things got really, really tough for me, I always found myself at the feet of the altar, of the deities, at the feet of the deities. And somehow like that was a good sign that's where I found sanctity, and that's where I felt safe, and I could always, maybe that was always there. And so even though I turned away many times, it seemed like I always, even when I was in my early like preteen age, I was like, when things were hard, that's where I wanted to be. So kind of like that was a sign.
Nice. So you were attracted to the deities of New Vrindavan.
Like that, yes, that's where I would run to in the hardest time, just like throw myself on the floor and be like, I don't know what to do. So I thought I might start with the early days, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So my mother and father were arranged to marry, as I said in the bio. And New Vrindavan in those days when they came was really austere. They were like chopping ice through the pond to get buckets of water to use for bathing and cooking and whatnot. And I know there's many stories that have circulated about those times in New Vrindavan. And when I was born, it was a time when the whole community got together to like push for the big temple and palace, the palace especially. It was completed actually the same year I was born. And when I was born, I remember my mother, she said like, it was just like the least important thing was the birth of a child. These days, like as mothers, we like do this whole ceremony, and there's just so much emphasis on like this baby is coming. And in those days, it was just kind of like, oh, another one came, but like everyone was so busy. My mother could hardly find somebody to help like deliver. It was like,
Aw.
you know, not that it's a pity or anything. It's just the way it was. It was really
Yeah.
busy. And when I came, it was really like, and Vrindavan had that, like the leader of the community pushed for like community and the projects, and he didn't really like put a lot of emphasis on like self-care or care for children or care in general. Care about, it was all just like, I don't know, it was a lot more emphasis on community than family. And my mother, even in the early days, when she was having hard times, twice she tried to run away and escape, and she got and she like got as far as like some way far away field, some farmhouse, and then they were called Kirtanananda, sorry if I want to say that, called the leader and was like, hey, we've got a few of your disciples here, you know, and they would come back and grab them and bring them back to New Vrindavan. So it was kind of like,
Wow.
just something about it. And it was funny because like they also had, there was like, because it was such a tough thing to go through in New Vrindavan to survive the winters and survive in general. When somebody would leave, they would consider them blooped, whether they went to another temple or just left completely. They blooped, like they just blooped, like, and that was the word as a kid I would hear, oh, this so-and-so blooped. And it would just be this like they popped or something. They just like exploded out and they're like gone. They're like no more in existence. Or, it was just a really weird word. I always thought it was funny, but
It is.
yeah. So they stuck it through and made it happen. A lot. My dad was especially a big part in building the community and he would tell me stories when I was a little girl of his great feats of like creating a pulley across this big valley, or like single-handedly pushing an ox cart out of this ditch that nobody thought was possible, or you know, so he was my hero, and I always thought he was like a superman.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was born into, a really kind of like people that had a lot of heart and love and like really wanted to follow a leader and really create something, a lot of passion, and it took a lot of commitment. So when I came, you know, it was during those days when everybody would give everything to Krishna, including their children. At least that's what they were thinking, you know, I'm giving my everything to Krishna. And when they would have children, so naturally we would go into the Gurukula. When we were 5 years old, I went in when I was 5, and they didn't know like what that really meant. I think it was kind of like a big experiment. I think I consider it like trying something that has never been done in this culture in the West, from something that's as ancient. And there were certain rules, I think, of how they created ashram and the way we were following it. I don't know if that's how it really rolled back then. But either way, for me, the ashram was a mix of blessings and also a lot of negative connotations as well. It was really steady. We would wake up every morning to the conch shell. We would bathe in like our ice cold showers 3 times. We would turn around, head to the temple. Like everything was dark, and we would head in, and we would be like, we would chant for a certain amount of time before the deities would open. And then after that, we would go back to the temple and clean up and eat breakfast, then go to school, which was 2 miles down the road. So we'd walk there every day, all the way 2 miles, rain, snow, whatever, you name it. We'd walk to school and then walk back. So it was like really austere and really, they ran it very like a military camp, really strict. Like everything was just, but we played the whole way there. We played the whole way back. We found a way to always be playing. So
yes,
it was sweet. And actually it was pretty sweet the first year or so, but the last few years I had a hard time because I was in an ashram, a class with a teacher who had a daughter, and this daughter decided for whatever reason, that I would be her target. So I was bullied really heavily by her. And I was
Yeah.
like in my 6th and 7th year, and she would do all kinds of things to get me into trouble. Like she would steal one of the girls' little Gopal deities and put it under my underwear in my cubby, and then tell on me, like, look what she did. And everyone would be coming around to gather and look, and like, wow, she stole Gopal, like how horrible she is, you know. And I
Yeah.
put in some big trouble. And another
Aw.
time she like, I won a sari, and the community was hosting, the ashram, and mainly the Gurukula was hosting a giant festival in honor of the kids, really, which is rare.
Yeah.
And they had all
Yeah.
these games set up, and I won one of the games, and I had played a game, I'd won it. And that alone was like, oh my God. And they gifted me this beautiful green sari woven with gold thread. And it was just like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I was so
Yeah.
excited. And she came over, this girl, she was like, that's mine, and grabbed it from me and ran to my mother and goes, she stole this from me. And I won it in a game and she stole it from me.
Oh no.
So it was like her thing against me. I have no idea like where it came from.
Right.
But I honor that was my karma. For whatever reason, that was what I had to go through. But I was always in trouble, always mopping floors, doing extra chores, writing lines, standing in the corner. And every time I would try to say, hey, it wasn't me, you know, I would be like, no one would like,
You.
I had no voice. And yeah, it was just really, I kind of felt alone at that point in my time in the ashram, like really alone. Like
Yeah.
even the other girls in the ashram, they didn't know how to handle this. They just kind of try not to be targets themselves and try to be as friendly as possible to this person. And it was just a really hard time. And eventually, like, she left. And, yeah, like, sure. Yeah, no problem. I can do that. I talk fast sometimes. So yes, it was a really lonely time, and
Yeah.
I felt very isolated. And there was nice times to go home and be with my family, but then it just felt like I don't think I had a lot of trust for anybody. I kind of actually retreated a lot into my own safety of myself, like really
Mhm.
introverted. And introverted is like, yeah, is how I was. I was just thinking about the next thing. The next thing was interesting. She left and was no longer a part of my life, and she blooped. And so but the damage was done. I don't know. I was a little messed up from that. But the next thing that happened was pretty interesting. The whole school closed down, and we were all sent to public school, all 200 of us, like at once.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
so I think the community was, I think that's about the time when the leader got hit on the head and was going
Oh,
through
right.
some really intense, there was a lot of like intense things. And I think it was, people were just leaving, and it wasn't enough to like sustain the school. So it
Right.
closed. The school closed, and we were sent to public school, a local public school. And at that time, we had a huge fear of the outside world, because we were
Right.
fed, and New Vrindavan was not in a city. It was not even in a town. It was like in a bubble out in the middle of West Virginia in the mountains. I don't think I
Like
even,
over 300 acres, right? It's
actually like 5,000 at that time.
5,000. Wow.
5,000 acres. Yeah.
Huge bubble.
Huge bubble. And so, and we would play games on the way to school. Like there was a couple locals that lived along certain roads, and would like pass by their house, and they would have deer hanging on their outside, deer skins hanging. There was like skulls up on their barn, and we would like be so scared of them, and like dare each other to go touch their fence and run away, and just really scared. So here we were, like, we're gonna go out to this school with these karmis and meat eaters, and God, it was really scary. But we were all together, so there was a sense of like, well, we're all going, and we're at each other. And when we went to the school, we were given these lunch boxes, and these red lunch boxes. And so you either had a choice, not a choice, they were given to you. So one had a sticker of the palace, and the other had a picture of a rock band. And the rock band, it was like 4 guys with long wild hair, and they like had these like crazy outfits, and they were like rockers. And for some reason, I guess the temple had bought all these, maybe some deal, and they put palace stickers on, but they didn't have enough stickers. So half of us had the rockers and the other half had the palace of the palace of gold. And we were just like, it was funny because we were like not sure which one was better, because the other thing looked so far out, like, whoa, what are these guys? And they look really cool, and like, oh, you got the rocker. And so it just, that was my first, we hadn't even gone to the school yet, but that was my first glimpse of a taste that I'm going into a world it's like a foreign world. Like, what is this rock band? Like, what is a rock band? I had no idea. So we get to the school, and they're scared of us, because they were raised with fear of us, like, we kill people and we bury them under the palace, and it's scary for them to know that, like, they're going to be in school with these kids that are part of this crazy cultish community. And so so they had their judgments and we had ours, and it was really strange initially. We even still had a uniform on, like a Catholic. We used to have like ashram uniform, but now we had like a Catholic skirt and like tie, and like they still had uniforms on us, and go to the school, and all the other children would be wearing whatever fashion of the day. And it was really interesting initially, that being in the ashram and going to public school there. And so yet again, it was really, I didn't feel connection to these teachers or the school itself. It was like not part of my real world. It was just something foreign. And eventually they would ask us all kinds of questions, and we would talk to them about, and they started to like us a little more. I was actually, because of my shyness and my introvertedness, I didn't make many friends. I still kept to myself quite a bit. But anyway, so eventually the ashram closed as well, and we were all sent home to live with our parents again. And I was 9 years old. And am I talking too fast again? I apologize. Okay. So I was sent home to live with my parents, and this is when I was 9 years old, and New Vrindavan was going through big changes, being interfaith, which was the idea that it's interesting, because in the scripture, our scriptures say, to just like to let go of abandon all varieties of religion. And I think our community at that time was doing the opposite of that and embracing all varieties of religion. So we had like people coming from all over the world to talk and connect. And I'll just name a few. Elizabeth Clare Prophet came, and the chief of a Native American tribe from North Dakota came to speak. There were Buddhist monks who came. Even an African king from a tribe from Africa. Like, it was just really varied, and a lot of Christian people with Christian faith, and a lot of people came from all over. And New Vrindavan was doing a lot of outreach through the rainbow gatherings. So we had Krishna camp, and we had a huge school bus that we converted into the Krishna camp bus, and it was always fully loaded. I would ride in the back on top of the teepee poles, and every year we'd go to the rainbow gatherings, and it was like really open, like, so people. And also during this time, the leader had gone to prison, so he was no longer physically present in the community, which is funny because it's almost like the parent is gone, the leader is gone, and everybody was just doing their thing, and it was very open. Like, some people were like really into the Native American stuff, like just really loved like doing crystal, doing new age stuff, we had sweat lodges. We were invited to, actually the Indian chief invited us to come to his tribe in South Dakota for a sun dance, and I went with my father actually. another devotee participated in the sun dance and like got the eagle feathers pierced through his chest and danced in the sun for 3 days. And they're just everyone was, and I thought it was really interesting how everyone sort of like what everyone's flavor started to become. It was really a very wide mix of flavors. I mean, even my own parents, my mother, just she always felt connected to Native American, the Native American tribes, and I think it was like she kind of enjoyed getting in touch with that. And it was kind of messy though, you know. It was in a sense, it's not really, nothing was straight. It was just anything.
There wasn't
goes.
a focus, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't a focus, and but it was kind of beautiful in a way.
Yeah.
In a way, there was some beauty to it, but it was unfocused. And for me, like, we studied the Bible. We had Bible night. I mean, how crazy was that, right? Like by then I'm 9 years old, so I'm a devotee Krishna. But here I'm just curious. Like, so we're having Bible night, going to Sunday. Yeah. So my whole idea of spirituality was just kind of blown apart at that point. I didn't have any idea there was too much of it for me to process, to the point where I just more looked at what people's energies and hearts were like. It's just kind of like getting people's vibrations. I was kind of focused on their vibration. So, yeah, and a huge influence was Amish. Everybody just in our community started really loving the Amish thing. They had a lot of Amish communities nearby because we wanted to live sustainably like that, and like and take from that what we could. And so my dad really appreciated the Amish lifestyle, and we would go visit those farms, learn how to learn what. They're a group of people that have sort of frozen in time, if you will. Frozen in time. They live like as if it was in the 1800s. Yeah. Okay. And so yeah, everything was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, a lot of exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. But then the everything for interfaith happened kind of slow at the same time. It wasn't like overnight. It just kind of kept getting more and more intense. Like initially it was going and preaching it and getting people coming. Then when I was 13, I was my father decided to help pay tuition for me to go to the day school in New Vrindavan. And I
from the public school. So this is you were still in okay.
Yeah, so up until then, so up until I was 13, I was in the public school. From like second grade to 6th grade, I was in public school. Then at 13, I went to the devotee school, and it was a dream school. Like I really loved it. Everything we did, it was very connective. We helped harvest the communities, like potatoes or whatever was in harvest. We all, as a community, we would help everyone harvest, or we would herd cows from one end of the community to the other. We had like we had our own school garden that we planted, and it was really, really sweet. And I had a really wonderful dance teacher, a Bengali woman named Amrita. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's my mother's name. Her name was Nectar. So Nectar, which means Amrita. So yeah. So she was really wonderful. And I was going at the time, in my home life, like my mother was having a lot of difficulties, and my parents had divorced, and she was having her own difficulties in life. It seemed like whenever I would be at the temple and with the community and at the school, it was one vibe, and then I would go home and it would be another vibe, and I just wasn't feeling comfortable floating between these two.
Right.
So I asked my mother, actually I moved in to the temple before I asked her, actually. Nectar offered to care for me, and she helped me, and I got a room in the temple and everything. And I moved all my stuff really slowly, actually, the things I really needed. And finally one day, after asking my mother night after night, can I stay tonight at the temple? The Nectar will be there. Yeah. And eventually I was like, can I move into the temple? So
Yeah.
she was like, sure, But that was my mother. I don't think she would have liked it if I outright just came and said, I want to move into the temple, but I got her really used to it. So
Right.
by that time, she was like used to it's like smooth. It was smooth. And I really feel like it was such a blessing because Nectar was the sweetest, she would cook a feast for me. And I would say, well, aren't you going to share this with me? And she would say, no, I cooked it all for you. She wouldn't even eat it. Like, I don't know why she had her own reasons. I don't know. But she would cook these amazing meals and she would just make sure I was like really well cared for and nourished. And I was, just the food alone, I guess, really says it all. Her love. It was part of her love and her kindness. And I was a really steady life, chanting every day, Mangal Arti, going to school, dancing. It was just, I wasn't really a great dancer or anything. I was very awkward. Part of my introvertedness was an awkwardness in my body. And but it was fun, even so.
Yeah.
It was fun up until I had to get on stage. But yeah, that's when I realized I'm not a dancer. But so it was.
So how many years were you living in the temple and going to
there,
day school?
I was going to the day school for 2 years.
Okay.
And I lived partly with my father at some point. He moved back to New Vrindavan. He'd been away and then he moved back. And he lived next to the temple. So I moved back in with him. And this is about the time when things were getting kind of wild. Like I had a lot of friends who were taking initiation, people I knew who were taking initiation from the leader community. I actually was 14 and I was prepared to take initiation. I had my robe laid out, not a sari, a robe. That's what they were wearing at that time. And they had monk. It was like, they really were trying to make there was like a book that the leader had come out with called Christ and Krishna or something.
Right.
Like, his whole idea, he might have been wanting to do interfaith, but he really was raised by a Baptist minister. So he had a lot of influence from that. And then he was almost taking those two things and trying to squash them together. Maybe the San Franciscan monks and did I say that right? No, the
Franciscan monks.
Yeah, them, and then merging it with like Krishna.
Yeah.
And so it was a very odd mix. Like you wore the robes and the beards and the simple.
Right.
And then it was like singing in hymns rather than in Sanskrit. It was hymns. There was an organ. They got it. They even had a Jesus in the temple on one of the Vyasasans to honor him. So
was he back when he was giving initiations to your friends? Was he back in the community or was it from jail or was he giving initiations from jail?
I think it was from jail.
Okay.
Yeah. Or I'm trying to remember, actually, it's a good question. Either it was from jail or he had like in between jail, like he was in and then
that's right. I remember that he had a house where he had to that's
like,
right.
Yeah. So something like that. It's kind of confusing, but that somewhere in all that I was, and it was interesting because I was going to take initiation and I had two women who were kind of prominent in my life at the time. One, her name was Joy from the Rainbow Gathering, and the other one was Jodi Soma, who was an old friend of my dad's and who traveled around, and once in a while she'd visit New Vrindavan and always come to see us. And she basically was wanted to see how I was doing. And when she heard I was going to take initiation, she was very upset because she saw everything that was pretty bad. Like she just was like, this she doesn't know what she's doing. This isn't this, and she wasn't into what was happening with interfaith or any of that. But Joy was from the Rainbow Gathering, was a disciple of the leader, and they were both fighting over me. And I was like, kind of like torn, like, well, here's one person I really respect and another, and they're fighting over me. And I want to take initiation, but I felt like, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this initiation. But the day of, it got canceled, luckily. So I was saved somehow. Krishna intervened. I don't even know how or why, but it got canceled. Probably a good reason. So initiation was canceled, and I I got saved from that. And the next year I went back to public school because the day school only went up to 8th grade.
Okay.
And after a year of being in the other world,
Yeah.
the following year, I begged my mother to let me move back into the temple and do a homeschool or something. I was crying, and I was like, I can't go back. I can't go back. So she agreed, and I moved back into the temple. And yeah, so I was living for another, when I was 16, I spent my year in the temple ashram again, but without Nectar. She wasn't there anymore, but yeah. But there was another, I actually moved in this time with 2 of my friends. I got them, they also wanted to do it. So there was a group of us. We created our own little school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had a nice time just being 16-year-old, and we did it right. Like I would say we did it pretty good. We did go to we did go to all the programs, chant arounds, do service. We didn't do so much studying of scripture though, for whatever reason. But that part of it, the ritual, we did the rituals.
Yeah.
And that lasted and kind of till it just fell apart, and I had to go back to the public school. And I feel like
high school.
I went back to the high school and just finished it out, and got my high school diploma. So yeah, so that kind of the interesting thing was that even though I had so much going on with religion and being in the temple, doing everything, because there was no sambandha gyan or any tattva or anything that was grounding me in it. It was just a ritual that's wasn't deep enough to keep me in it. And I felt like it was time to explore the world, really explore the world and see what was out there. It
can be more of just like a cultural experience, or maybe like a cultural designation, something that,
yeah.
So you explored, so you decided to explore get out of that bubble.
I decided to explore out of the bubble. Yes, the bubble burst, and I was taking my association at that time. I had 2 really good friends, and we hung out a lot together, and kind of had our own little fairy circle. We were like fairies. We spent a lot of time in the forest and really connected with the forest and the idea of like fantasy. A lot of photo shoots of us in the forest doing flower wreaths and like just we like, that's how I spent like my
Gopi fairies
and until like someone got a boyfriend, and then it all changed. But
they do that.
It was like it was like party. Now it was party time, and I did a bit of that with them, and until I was actually like, it was kind of negative for me. It was too much drugs, too much like of everything. I got really intense. I think I felt almost like I'm gonna like suffer if I stay here.
Yeah.
It was about the time when a friend of mine asked me to come to India with her, and that was a game changer yet again. Another game changer. Going to India was like taking the journey that I had to take to see it for real, to see what was this all about. Well, I needed to see that, and I don't even think I intentionally thought that in going, but now that I look back, I'm like, I had to see that. I had to see what real bhakti could look like, what was the potential, and the magic of Vrindavan and Mayapur captured me. It was like the people and the way they lived it. It was like, it wasn't fake. This was real. This was something real, and it was pure. And seeing that and being in India, it was just like, it showed me the potential of spirituality, actually.
Yeah. How long were you able to be there for?
6 months I was there.
Oh, wow. That's a nice amount of time.
Yeah, it was really sweet time, and just going to everywhere. I went all over, and really helped me. Just like I really love. This is what I love. Like where it's reestablishing that in my heart. Like, then from there, my mother had moved to LA and my sister, so I chose to find a school there and study fashion again. And this time I did finish and have a degree, and I worked in the field, and then realized that it was so far from what I wanted. Like, I didn't realize till I was in it. It was like cutthroat and dog eat dog, and people climbing over each other's backs to get to the top. It was really bad. And I felt it, like, and I was like working in these there's like no windows in my office where I had to work. It was just like in a jail. I was like in a prison. And I felt like it wasn't my place. I didn't feel right there. And about the same time I quit, I got fired, actually. And I was driving back towards Watsika, and I went straight into the temple, and I was just like, Krishna, what do I do? So I spent all this time and energy studying this thing. I don't want to be a fashion designer, like, at all. Like that went out the door pretty quick. And while I was in the temple, Krishna sent somebody to me, I believe. And she came in the form of an art teacher, Shakuntala. She asked me, she said, I'm looking for someone to help me teach art classes to children. Would you be interested? And I looked like, what? I just lost my job, and here you are offering me like a really sounds.
You were
like
still in the temple room, like right after you.
Still in the temple room.
Wow. Okay.
So I'd gone straight from getting fired into the temple room, was praying and not knowing what I'm going to do next. And she comes up and is like, I have a job for you. And I accepted. And so Shakuntala, she was a force to be reckoned with. I'll just name. So she taught art classes from like 8 in the morning until 6 at night, like every day, sometimes on weekends if there was a party. She did yoga classes. She organized Rath Yatra. She was always like doing something. Anyway, she was she had a very hectic, kind of wild like situation that I went into. It was like her business was just so unorganized, and things were just kind of falling through the cracks, and she just was trying to hold it together. And I didn't have any skills, like in that way, I could no life skills of, like, I couldn't even leave a message on a machine like, hey, you owe this much money. No, it was like so hard for me, any of business, secretarial. But for some reason, even though I'm more of an artsy type, is not my place. She really she liked me enough and she liked working with me. She really just kind of was like, all right, she's training me up the whole way, training me up. And she's not a nice boss. So even though she's a really sweet person, working for her was hard, but she had to be, because it was, she had a lot for, to keep it managed. And she knew she had the vision of what needed to happen. She couldn't do it herself, but she could apply me to it. And we created a really, really amazing like working business relationship. But over the years, the 2 years I worked for her, she saw that that there was more under this shell that I had, this like sort of introverted, like hiding behind myself. Like I was so internal, and I was scared almost of things outside of myself, almost like a little fearful. And like if she did things that I didn't like, I wouldn't say, hey, that's not okay. I would just like not talk to her for a little bit or whatever. I was very passive aggressive, I guess. She knew, so one day she was just like, I'm gonna break that. I'm gonna get you to come out of there. I know you're in there. She's like, I know you're in there. And she did. She actually did. She broke my shell, and she released the dragon. Years had bottled it all up. I was just such a tight, like kept it all inside and dealt with it internally most of the time. I never external. No, I was scared to confront anybody and it was just really important that she was there to help me move through that, because I don't think I would be who I am if that wasn't for her. So
Yeah.
But-
So because we're running a little short on time, I thought maybe you could, so it seems like you were always drawn to staying close to devotees and staying close to practicing bhakti, and you had a little bit of chance to try out the material world, but you didn't have to try it too much. You understood that it was
Yeah.
only going to lead to suffering.
Yeah.
And and it seems like your experience with Shakuntala really matured you, kind of
Yes.
brought out a whole part of you that might, through the difficulty of it, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's so
Yes.
difficult,
Yes.
it brought out a part of you that might not have. And I really like what you said about growing up, you were attached to Krishna, but there wasn't so much of that sambandha gyan. So do you want to share a little bit maybe
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how you came to find that?
Good question. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I felt like my mold got broken a couple times. It was really good for me, all the messiness and the craziness.
Mhm.
But when I met Amal, and I had moved to Alachua to get away from all the big city stuff, and I met him there, and one day we had a vision of we were in a beautiful place that was really amazing. It was like a permaculture orchard, and it was just beautiful up there, and it was near Alachua. But we had a vision that was like, we want community. The only thing missing here is Krishna. Like everything we have here is beautiful, but there's nothing, there's no juice. So sent us on a mission to California to be with other, well, at this point, Guru Coolies. And my brother took us to, we went out there, my brother brought us to visit Odaria. And of course we fell in love with the temple there. It was just really beautiful. And what I realized is, like, when we met Guru Maharaj and Odaria and the whole thing, it was not, there was no more triggers. There was not as many, there was the triggers that I had, like with ISKCON or with temples or with Krishna consciousness. There was all these triggers that I carried from different things. And I wasn't faced with those triggers when I came there. It felt like it wasn't that Maya is horrible and the material world is or that, like, oh, they're karmis and this, there's no, like, all these
I know
things
we thought they were like a different species, right?
Yeah.
They weren't even human beings, karmis. There was such a negative connotation. I remember thinking that. It's like, are they human?
Right. Are they even human? Like, they eat animals. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. So you didn't there wasn't that.
The Guru Maharaj, he called it a monastery. He would refer to them as monks. It was a simple, not this crazy splendor of like the temple I was used to. It was very humble and simple, and it was like attractive. It was like, this is something I could really get into. And Guru Maharaj's words, and he actually told me the first day I met him, when we visited him and sat down in his room, and he said, I told him a little bit, and he just said, I've helped others who've been there, from coming from where you've been, I've helped them. And saying, I can help you too. I'll help you too,
Nice.
And it was really sweet. And but I had trust issues at that point. When we started growing and taking on more with bigger projects, I actually got really scared, because it was like, oh, here we go again, big projects. They need more of our time and more work, more labor to create something. I got really kind of nervous about that, I think.
Like, you mean Sri Chaitanya Sangha?
Yeah, our Sangha was
our Sangha,
we had it pretty good, but then it was like suddenly we were growing and more, and it was really hard for me, because I had a very huge distaste for like accumulating more and making things bigger, or I liked it small, simple, and it felt like, even though it was small, each one of our projects wasn't in a way kind of small, it just felt overwhelming to me, and like I actually was turned a little, and Amal was going through some things too of his own, and I also had never fully like gotten to that place of trust, I think, where I could trust any Swami in general. And something came up with that, and we were we were exploring other paths. I remember once we went to a movie of Thich Nhat Hanh, who was somebody that we'd been listening to. And in this movie, in this documentary, the disciples were taking initiation, shaving their heads. They were giving up their worldly things. They were going on these walks with slow, silent, long walks with Thich Nhat Hanh. It was just like, couldn't hear a sound. It was just quiet, just walking for hours. Like it felt like they were just walking and walking. And when we got out of the theater, Amal looked at me and he's like, I guess I'm not a Buddhist. It's like, that was it. That's not, they were doing the same shaved head, but yeah. So we decided, like we were just exploring, and at some point, he was going to take, we had only one remnant of our connection to Bhakti left, which was 2 pictures, one of Srila Prabhupada and one of Radha Vrindavan Chandra on our bookshelf. And everything else had gone, our cases of Srimad Bhagavatams, our statues we had of Krishna Balaram, and he was taking, they was like, well, I guess we don't need these anymore. And I said, no, those stay. And I realized like, I'll never let that go. That's the Prabhupada and that's Radha Vrindavan Chandra. They will never go. Like they'll always be in my heart. That was my realization at that moment. I wasn't ever gonna let that. And it was interesting that internal, like, I acted all, let's go with the flow and try. No, there was like, we got too far and I was like, I can't go there. So, and interestingly enough, around that time, we ended up in a class in Saragrahi, the Sandarbhas. We were studying the Paramatma Sandarbhas. They were studying Paramatma Sandarbhas. And when we came into that class, we didn't even plan on coming. It was just kind of random. But the class that Dulal gave was just, the words of Jiva just spoke so deep to my heart. Like every word he said, it was almost like I came at the perfect class at the perfect time somehow, because what he was saying was just what I needed to hear. And it's like, we gotta come back again. And like each class we were just like, and Sumati was like, had her pad and she's writing really like fast and just like listening questions. And I'm like, she's been doing this for like, and she's excited, she's all enthusiastic. I'm like, I'm in the right place. This is the right place. Like this is where we are. We're on this ground here where we're just like covering new territory. Like, and it was just so beautiful and so it gave me so much that I think that was when we finally were like, for me at least, where I was having these pillars of faith being pounded into the ground of like, what is this? And Guru Maharaj all the time has been speaking it and my ears, I wasn't able, because of my inability to fully see him properly. But through that, I could finally see Guru Maharaj properly. Like Guru Maharaj, even one day he was at our house and Guru Maharaj looked at me and he said, I hear you've been listening to the Sandarbhas, and his eyebrows raised a little, like, and I was like, yeah, like, so it felt like he knows so, like, he's the living embodiment of that, like, of everything I'm finding. So it was just like finally this connection with the whole thing, with the scripture and with the living representative. It just kind of locked together and finally felt like I wasn't on this crazy, like, uncertain journey. I was finally ready to commit my first step into bhakti, like really my first step, like realizing I want what I want.
And how long were those classes, the Sandarbha classes?
I think we went for a year.
A year, wow.
It was a year. It was a long time. We went for, it felt like a year. I don't know. Maybe it was shorter, but it felt like a while. That year, pretty much that whole
year. You just
year.
really committed to going to those classes. And
3 times a week. Yeah, it was 3 times a week, and we were there, like, excited every day. And then, Saragrahi, led us to connecting with Hillsborough, with Garangi and Madan, and we were actually going to move to Alachua because we wanted friends for our children. And they saw us at the wedding, and our friend's wedding, and they came up and we're like, we're moving to Alachua, and and they're like, what? Hold on. So through their love, and they're just like, no, we love you, come be with us, and they talked, our hearts answered. We were like, yeah, why would we do that? Like, even though at the time Hillsborough had no children, like of my boy's age, hardly, just Pranaya maybe was like the only one.
Yeah.
Right. but it all manifested very quickly. Many children came and it worked out. But yeah, so
We're
sorry.
so
I know
glad you
it's
came.
so fun, but yes, me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's so interesting to me. I really think it's powerful to hear your story and how important sometimes we don't, or Guru Coolies especially might not understand the importance of Sambandha Gyan, and how having that foundation of why and what and where we're going. And the philosophy can be hard sometimes. Like you were saying, living in the temple, it was the rituals, and that's sometimes a little easier, but it's really nice to hear how that's when everything started clicking for you, and that was a really important part of your journey.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to share about maybe the most profound change that you've seen in yourself through years?
I would say
Yeah.
I had some very deep scars connected to chanting the mantra, and also maybe reading like the books in general.
Yeah.
And I feel like the biggest change I've noticed is that once those things happened, I slowly started to find so much nourishment in that, where I'd never thought I could. I thought, well, I'll always have art. Like this chanting is so difficult. Like I can't get through this. Like how, but now I feel like I can actually, it's like I call it my lifeline. It's like my lifeline. Like without it, I am nothing. Like this is my lifeline. And I finally am able to connect with the japa and with the scripture and just in general with that. And I feel like something I never thought I could ever do was enjoy chanting. And like,
wow.
So
that's a huge change. For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. All right. Well, before we take questions, are there any other insights or gifts or life lessons from your journey that you want to share with us? Because it's through sharing you inspire others. So it's really nice hearing your journey. But if there's anything else, any other parts of your story that maybe really created wisdom or special gifts for you, any last bits, and then maybe we'll take some questions.
I think that along the way, I feel like having certain association, like knowing certain people along the way, it's always felt like Jodi Soma, Nectar, even my mother, my father, you guys, like just along the way, there's this like people that are in your life and they're so connected to bhakti, and so having those connections, I've never fully got swept away because of them, and I don't know what would have happened. So
yes, association is so powerful. Well, thank you. It was really, really nice hearing your story, and some of it I've heard before, but there were some parts that I didn't hear before. I never heard about Nectar, so she sounds like a real sweetie. So yes, thank you for being here and for sharing your story. And I'm, like I said in the beginning, it's nice to have a Guru Coolie sister. Found shelter with Guru Maharaj, our sanga. Do we have any questions for Atula Sakhi that anyone would like to ask? Let's check the chat real quick. All right.
Okay.
Haribol.
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 We have no questions, but just want to thank you because this was just amazing, and I'm moved to tears here at the end. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your words and all that you guys do. Actually, I'm a big fan, actually. All your work. I follow.
Yeah. I have a question actually, even though I've already been asking the question. So what is your relationship with New Vrindavan today? Like, I'm sure you still feel a connection to it. But yeah, what is it did change so much and then it joined back into ISKCON and
Yeah.
I guess you weren't there for a lot of that part.
No.
Right.
I went back for the Kuli Mela in 2006, was it?
Yeah.
Kuli Mela was amazing. And I haven't been back since then. Or
Oh,
did I?
okay.
No, I might have been once. No, I went once more with Amal.
Uh-huh.
Went and I haven't gone in a long time and I feel like I'm scared to.
Yeah.
I see pictures sometimes I'm like, it just looks like it's becoming more, I don't know, it could be really great, but I'm a little nervous. I have this dream in my mind of what it is. And actually I love New Vrindavan. It's in my heart.
Right. Yeah.
That's where I was. But from what I hear, I get nervous, of what they've dug up, what they've destroyed, or what they've kept. I don't know. I'm still thinking
maybe the memories are more beautiful.
Yeah. I know they've done a lot of work to it to make it better for guests, and I'm sure they repainted everything. It's like blinking beautiful place. But I actually plan to take my boys there soon, maybe next year at some point soon. I really want them to come. And a little tidbit of interesting information was that Amal Sham also lived in New Vrindavan. You guys didn't meet there. Yeah, we just missed. We just missed each other. And we do have one question here in the chat. We'll end with this question. So this is from Sarada. Are you still in contact with people of other faiths? And were some of them influenced by the devotees? I'm not in contact with any of them. And I do believe they were definitely influenced by, I don't know. There's a couple who came from, but now that New Vrindavan is, ISKCON, they also are ISKCON. So they may have been coming in with Bhakti or with the leader at the time, but now they're, so I guess so, yeah. And the leaders of the other faiths, they weren't really, I guess, coming to be they were more sharing their faith. It seemed like it, yeah. It seemed like everyone was like, it's interesting. They came to preach, I guess. Right. Everybody preached. Everyone was preaching. Yeah. Far out time. Yeah. All right. Well, any other last questions? Atula's right after this interview, she's going to teach at our devotee school. One of her other great talents is teaching children art classes. So she's heading to that. Oh, sorry, was there something?
I think Mahara was trying to speak.
Oh, okay.
But she should put English, otherwise we can't hear her.
I think she.
Oh, there you are. It's a little bit slow.
Well, you seem to be having connection issues the last times.
Maybe typing it.
You want to write it in the chat? It's just really delayed. Can you write it in the chat? No.
Yeah.
If you can write it in the chat, your connection is not strong enough, so it's just stretching out your.
Sure.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, can you hear me now?
All right.
Or
All right, Bo.
you could actually, you could try calling me and I
Can you
can
hear
put
me
you
now?
on speaker.
There is someone on the phone who's trying to speak, to ask something.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
There's-
Hello? No. Yeah.
oh, Mahara, you can hear
Yeah.
her?
Who can hear me?
Maybe she
Anybody?
didn't,
I can
did she
hear
do
you,
the
Mahara.
thing you have to do?
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of Mahara,
Okay,
but
I'll read
Shama
that.
Sundar has a question.
All right, we have a question from Sham Sundar.
Oh,
I was wondering if you were able to go through your traumas in an active, conscious way, or did your life just get better and that is it? I'm thinking of the girl who was bullying you. I really felt for you. I hate all those isms, racism, bullying, etc.
thank you. Thank you. I feel your love.
Shama Sundar.
I've had a little support over Amal Sham is really amazing at talking through. Amal Sham has done some work with me. He's a really good kind of counsel in that sense. We've gone through some of it. Now I have another support group of ladies who I feel like comfortable sharing, and I feel like, yes, I'm actively working through those things now and over the years a little bit, and life has gotten better as well. So
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a nice question. All right. Well, I don't know if we can get Mahara. Do you want to try once more? No? Did you do the mute thing? The mute thing? Okay, because Akura said he could do it, but okay.
Okay.
Okay, 'cause Akura- yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining. We had a nice group. I appreciate all the stalwarts that come on to every interview. Sakirati and Sham are always up there.
They're on everything.
They're on everything.
all the time.
Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining. We had a nice group. I appreciate all the stalwarts that come
Oh,
on.
Mahara, you have to
Oh.
mute.
It's great when you hear yourself back. Not fun. Okay. All right. Well, Dandavat, Pranam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakopa Turubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. The treasures of our life are the devotees. Thank you, Atula Sakhi. Haribol, everybody.
Thank you, Gurangi and Madan and Atula Sakhi.
Bye, Mitra.